Hey everyone, Sycra here, and welcome to another episode of Pointy Chins, where I take you through my art journey to find a cool style. Except I've kind of found one already. I guess I'm refining it now more, or maybe it's just my journey to become a better artist, because the style is pretty much solid. It's more just trying to learn how to do things. And for instance, in this episode, I'm going to be learning how to draw hair, or at least get better at it, because I'm not, I don't think I really learned how to draw hair, but I do think I improved, and hopefully my insights or struggles will help you somehow. So here I go, and I started again with these kind of ribbony things, but applying it to a torso more. So this is getting kind of abstract, but it's sort of a torso shape, and then playing around with shapes more. So here's where we get into more of the hair thing, right? So twisting motions. And then I started doing breasts and more normal breasts, I suppose, and then trying to make them pointy and what that would look like and if that's even a good idea or not. So the verdict's still out on that one. But here we get to hair. And the thing I wanted about hair, and I've talked about this before, is that hair to me is something that is more free. It's not necessarily something that needs to make sense, in my view anyway. I mean, it should in a general sort of way, like physics should kind of make sense, but even that I'm not sure about. So in these, I'm just exploring with how far I want to take hair. I know I want it to be dynamic. I know I want it to be kind of silly and just defying gravity and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But I still want it to look somewhat, I don't want to say believable, but something that doesn't bother you. And I think this is where a lot of interesting stuff happens, is when something doesn't look wrong and it doesn't look right, but it's believable even though it's crazy. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's very much where I'm trying to head with my stuff, because there are certain things that look like, well, someone might say I'm drawing this and this is my style, but it looks wrong. And then there are other things that look okay. Like, to me, this person's figure is very stylized, and yet it doesn't bother me too much. When I look at it, I don't think like, wow, this is really crazy and I don't know what's going on. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And the same thing with this person's face. It's like, sure, the eyes are really big, but it looks quite manga-like, but a little bit different. So it doesn't bother me at all. Now I could imagine someone who's not used to anime or manga, and they might look at this and they might be like, what is this? This is all crazy. But to me, it's fine. And I really like this one. Especially, I think, the expression of this girl. I really like it. And the hair is just, as you can see, it's absurd. It just goes everywhere. And I wasn't sure, do I want to do things like this, where it's really random, or should I make it more tame and think more about a basic shape? So here, and I should mention the date. So this is January 8th, 2015, and it's my 596th day into my consecutive study thing. 596 days in, and yeah, January 8th, 2015. So a lot of people leave comments advising I should do this or I should do that, and this is still a little while ago, so a lot of the things I've kind of solved, but it's still helpful. In case I haven't dealt with it, then it's still nice to see comments. But yep, just some more hair and some more proportion things. It's something that I want to build up, because the big goal is getting this all in my muscle memory, getting mileage, and it's something that I'm really trying to figure out a way of saying this eloquently, because it's so important. It's that, this is something I've learned, that you can have knowledge, and knowledge is important, but if you're not ready for it, the knowledge is wasted. And for a long time, I had a bunch of knowledge, but I wasn't ready for it. Now, what do I mean by ready for it? Well, I mean you have mileage. You have drawn enough. Because something cool happens when you just have been drawing for a very, very long time. Your brain will actually change. Now, you need a lot of mileage. I don't know if it's 10,000 hours or whatever it is. You need a lot of it. And then what happens is when you get knowledge, it starts to make sense. You can use this. And I would see this with other people who would just draw a ton, and maybe they'd get all their drawing done in their very early years. So maybe before 16 or 17, they've already got this mileage. Maybe they didn't really study, right? They didn't try and get everything to be correct, but they just drew and drew and drew and drew. So what's happened is their brain has rewired in a way that it's an artist's brain. It now is ready, like all the neural pathways have connected to form this brain that is capable of seeing visual information and translating it onto a two-dimensional surface. Now, without that, if you just have the knowledge and you just have the theory, you're gonna run into problems where it's like, you can explain it, you know how it works, but you can't do it. And I would have this a lot, where I would be able to look at a picture and be like, yeah, this is off. But if someone said, okay, well, fix it, I wouldn't be able to fix it. And now, like, all this stuff, I see this is off, and I should remember to explain in more detail why I think some things are off. But let's say this girl, right? She's off because, well, okay, so this is looking down, she's in perspective. So this would be the top of her head, but first of all, there's not a clear definition between the front plane and the top plane, which is bad, because she's looking at 3/4. So as her head is looking down, you would see more, the head would be visible more in this area and not just straight up and down. And this is something that, again, with mileage, this is something that you pick up. And before this, I would just keep wondering, why is it other people could do things, but if you ask them to explain it, they won't be able to explain it. But they could do things I couldn't do, but I could explain everything but not do any of it. And so, or I couldn't, other times I just couldn't see things. And this is why. And also things like making marks, you know. The more you do it, the better you get. Even things like this, like, oh, how did you draw it? So all these lines are kind of going in the same direction. And this would have been really hard for me when I was starting out. I might have thought, like, did you use a ruler for that? How do you get that? And said, no, it's just mileage. It's just drawing a lot. The problem is people, myself included, I'll just say myself, because I didn't understand how much mileage. I thought mileage is like, well, I've been drawing for years now. That's not mileage. Mileage isn't just how long you've been drawing. It's how many hours you've put pencil or pen to paper, or your stylus to your tablet. And that's measured in thousands of hours. So again, you might be thinking like, well, you know, I drew yesterday and I drew today. Why haven't I improved? And it's really not that simple. And if someone is working, you know, 8 hours a day, drawing every single day, and they do that for a year or two, now they're getting some serious mileage. This is actually getting to the point that you have enough from this 8 hours a day for 2 years. But that's a lot of drawing. And it's very difficult to do that much unless you're really enjoying it, which is also part of, I believe it's part of the journey, is to learn how to enjoy this stuff. How to draw what you want. How to make it so you're drawing so much. Because you can't, or it would be really, really, really difficult to hate drawing or hate what you're drawing and do it for that many hours. So again, some more crazy hair here. And also, some people have asked me, you know, why do you keep drawing the same thing? Why don't you do other things? And it's exactly this reason. Because I realize I need mileage, but I don't like drawing certain things. So it's like, okay, well, why waste time drawing things you don't want to draw and not getting the mileage? Instead, draw what you really want to do. Get all this experience. Because when I was in my high school years, there were times where I didn't draw for like 6 months, or I might just do a sketch in a notebook or something, and it really wasn't good. Whereas you hear of other people and they sort of just draw nonstop, and that wasn't me. I wasn't drawing nonstop. I was playing video games. I was watching movies a lot. I was hanging out with friends, and I wasn't drawing all the time. And then when I would draw, it was stuff that, you know, when I finally got to the point of learning, I was just trying to get information instead of building up my mileage. And I got afraid of things like mileage because I didn't really think I could draw for that many hours. And the times I did, like there have been a couple of times in my life where I've been drawing for 16 hours a day, and those were all times where I had a teacher or some expectation of like, you need to do this, you need... I did this when I was learning values, and also when I was learning caricature. I really devoted myself to this because I had an idea of what I need to do, and I had a teacher who was there to say like, hey, you know, you're doing this wrong. So then I got really obsessed about it. But other than that, I didn't until I started doing more of this type of stuff. And I'm not doing 16 hours a day, not at all. Maybe 2 or 3 hours of study type stuff and then just work stuff, but not, you know, 8 hours of drawing and studying. This is more really crazy hair, and this is more simple. So see, this hair is just sort of a basic shape, and this is more how hair actually behaves. This really isn't. But again, I thought this was kind of cool, like this type of strand that comes around and just doing random crazy things. It's all exploration. It's figuring out what works, and I really like this thing. Maybe I didn't do a good job of pulling it off, but I like the idea of it. And also, this looks fairly fast, and this was something I was trying to gain from Joe Mad, is how to make things look fast. And again, it's a mileage thing. Just drawing a lot of this type of stuff, eventually it starts to make more sense. And here is the opposite direction where I was saying, do I just block it into a basic shape and then make the internal forms very crazy, but the external form is really simple? So if you could imagine that you just blocked out all this stuff with a black marker and you just had the shape of this. Well, it's sort of like just a diamond here and a diamond here. It's 2 diamonds. It's nothing difficult. It's very basic, very simple. And the same thing was here. Like, do I want to go that route? Because that's also a very good route, especially in terms of things like animation. You'll see this a lot where you have shapes and everything. Like, think about Mickey Mouse's ears, right? You've got those 2 circles, and they don't make any sense because in the front view, they're 2 circles, perfect circles. And then in the side view, they're 2 perfect circles. And in 3/4 view, they're 2 perfect circles. Like, that would only work if the ears were perfect spheres. But that's not what a mouse ear looks like. So if they were flat like plates, then as they turned, they'd become elliptical. But for the sake of design, they went this. They took this approach to make it like, well, this doesn't make sense. This wouldn't work in reality, but we're going to do it anyway, and it tends to work. I really hate what's happening with the butt, but this is one of those things with pen where, oh, you drew 1 too many lines, try and fix it, add something more. Oh, it got worse, it got worse, it got worse. It looks like she has a big crevice here. And then this is on top, so that's a fail. And this too, you know, simplifying it to this extent, I think that's a big, that just didn't work at all. And this guy is funny. I don't know what he's thinking, but it's probably something funny. And more hair. So this, again, it's a bit more tame, and this is a bit more crazy and pushing expressions, pushing things. Remembering that I have a background that comes from fine art and portraiture that led to caricature, animation, then concept art and illustration and stuff. So it's like, well, bring back your caricature more. So I started doing that. I started remembering like, oh yeah, I had caricature. What if I put the style on it and played with it some more? So more experiments. What I'm really struggling with here are things like the clumps. Like, okay, so this hair is in clumps, but how many clumps? How do you arrange the hair? How do you make it so it's still 3-dimensional? See, the problem here is the hair is sort of 3-dimensional in this way, but the face is very flat, almost looks like it's cut out of paper. And then the body is like, yeah, it's kind of 3-dimensional, but kind of flat. So this is a problem, but this is something to work on. So when I'm saying, you know, this picture is not good or whatever, that's probably one of the things. I kind of like the proportions of this guy, I like his attitude. I like how he's like, meh, who cares? And this girl, well, this I actually like a lot. Like this, it's almost like an arrow shape of her gesture. I think that's really cool. And what's interesting is looking back at some of this work, I'm seeing that my current work isn't as appealing in some ways, because I've been working on different things. it's been, like right now I'm working a lot on perspective and foreshortening and stuff. And so I'm losing some of this gesture and some of these shapes that's like, no, that's pretty cool. But this is how it works. This is something to not be discouraged by, because after you've got experience, you learn, like, it's always that way. You focus on something and you'll kind of get rusty in other areas, but then you bring them back and you bring it all together again. And you're never going to forget that much. Like, you're always going to be able to relearn it faster than it took to learn it in the first place. So you should never worry too much. Pretty okay poses here. I guess I was already doing a bit of perspective here. And this person punching. It's a very weak pose, but I think it's cool in that, sure, at least you're trying this now. Man, I think this guy's cool. And his hair, I actually really like that hair. It's going to be very pixelated, but yeah, that's pretty nice. So, yeah, this is a surprise for me too. This guy's face, though, very, very wacky, because if you look at his hair, the perspective is sort of going, so you have like a straight line on his face. If you imagine it, it would go that way, like in this direction, but then his eyes are going a different way, and then his mouth is going sort of the right way again. So this eye is wrong, or this eye is wrong, and it needs to be shifted up, or this needs to be shifted and rotated. But it's in pen, so it's you can't just Control T rotate things with pen, but it's an issue. Let's see, a cat, and this is really cool. That's really nice. I like this idea. I should have done more with this stuff. Maybe I'll do it again. And here I went into some more thumbnails. I'm always bouncing around a few different ideas, be it gesture, anatomy, proportion, or design. And thumbnails fall into the category of design. You make a shape of this frame, right? And then you have to make what's inside appealing. And the dark marker just makes it so it's visible, that you focus on this shape, and then you have clear negative shapes. And the idea is to make it very interesting. So these are cool. I like this one, probably just because I added the yellow. But yeah, just adding some. And this guy's farting, and it goes. So there's that. Okay. So more playing with proportions now. The hair is still there. It's still something I'm thinking about. But that idea of caricaturing things, it sort of stuck with me. And I realized, I'm not pushing things as much as I could. So this character, I really pushed the hands. I gave him huge hands, huge feet, huge calves, very skinny and long thighs. But it's very strange, but I kind of like it. And I think I drew this character first. And he's very tall, and he's got this strange haircut, which I like as well. I like how the hair sort of floats around his head. It's very interesting design to me. But I didn't like his proportions. I didn't like that he was so tall. I didn't feel like it was a good character. So I thought, okay, if I was to redesign it, just on a very basic level, what would his proportions be like that I would be more happy with it? And I did this one. I think that's much better. This one I really don't like. I don't like this shape. It's kind of boring, and so the shapes just aren't appealing. And if you're not sure about that, well, I think as you develop as an artist, you will be able to spot things. It gets to the point that it's really hard to explain, but you know it when you see it. Like when I look at this one, it's more appealing than this one. I guess if I was to analyze it, it would be that, let's say you take this guy's eye and you make a line. Well, this has quite a bit of space up top and a lot of space on the bottom. And that makes it almost boring. Whereas this guy, he has a little space on top and a lot of space on the bottom. So that ratio that's not symmetrical is much more appealing. And symmetry is something that's important in a way to get away from. Symmetry works a lot, but it also doesn't work in many situations, and it's very hard much harder to make things appealing and symmetrical. Whereas when you first start, symmetry is like the thing. It's like, whoa, you drew a face and it's a front view, and you made this eye on the right look like the eye on the left, that is awesome, because that's very hard to do. And so symmetry is really coveted in the beginning, and it's sort of, you have to mature to the point where it's like, you can do this, you can see this, and there's also a sort of safety and order that comes from symmetry, like this feels right. And I hate to say it this way, but it's almost, again, it's a naive, a little bit immature way of looking at the world where things are split into black and white. And as you get older, it's much more interesting when things have shades of gray and layers and things aren't quite right. That seems interesting. When a face isn't perfect, it becomes much more interesting than like, oh, this is very beautiful and perfect and there's no flaws. I think appreciating character, that comes, well, for me it came with age. Maybe for some people it's just, you know, they're a bit more mature, because I guess I'm still pretty immature. And yeah, I like this guy screaming. I always had problems with this type of face, with mouths that were open. I don't think this is perfect, but it's kind of cool. I like that. And here, I was drawing some hands and feet, so again, realizing that I probably have a weakness, and I also need to translate the stuff into the style. And for people who want to say you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be thinking about style, you should just draw a lot and the style comes naturally, I totally understand this viewpoint, but it's not something that's worked for me. And by comparison, doing this, actually pursuing the style, really has. And it's difficult to explain, you know, why, but I feel like the people that say, you know, style doesn't matter, they're very visual, and they're able to see things the way I'm not. And I made a Pointy Chins episode on ribbons, and a lot of people thought that was an April Fool's joke because I was struggling so much. And some people didn't believe, like, how can you not know how to do such a simple thing? And I had mentioned before, you know, I don't have a visual memory. When I close my eyes, everything's dark. When I see people's faces, I can't remember them. And some people had commented that, you know, oh, I think this is all in your head, and you're just using this as an excuse, and you have it, and you don't need to worry about it. But actually, no, it's a handicap. I cannot do this, or at least it's very difficult to do this. And so when it came to that, it was a case of, oh, actually, you really do have this much of an issue. And then when I try and do this stuff, I feel like this thinking about it, analysis, and playing with shapes, not only does it give me the ability to keep up with people who are more visual just by virtue of having more mileage, but it also lets me play around more. Because, okay, here I'm doing fingernails, for instance, right? I'm just trying out different types of fingernails. So here's probably the most normal, realistic fingernail, I suppose. And then these are all variations. How do I want to take it? How far do I want to push it? And I don't see how you could do this just naturally. Maybe it's possible. Maybe some people just naturally see the world this way. But for me, this seems like a design choice. It seems like there's got to be some thought behind it. Even if it's subconscious, there's got to be something behind this. And maybe it is that the people that can do this, that don't need to think about style, they've just interpreted it in a way that, and it's like, okay, I've seen this enough, or I've drawn this enough, or maybe I've copied this enough, but I've always had problems with copying things. I just don't learn when I copy other people's work as much as I do when I see something in front of me. So for instance, when I tried to draw hands and I looked at how other people drew hands, I was drawing a blank. I would try and copy it. It just didn't work. I couldn't get it. My brain was like, I don't understand. I could only copy the shapes. But then after I did that, I didn't remember anything. But when I started using a mirror and just looking at my hand in the mirror, moving my hand around, it was like, oh, this makes sense. You know, I got to draw this. I don't understand this, but this makes sense. So here I'm using a red pen because I got a bunch of different colored pens. I use a Uniball 0.38 pen, and it is cool, but I really like the blacks, but I run out of blacks, and then the only ones I could find were this colored set. So I have that. So here's reds. And let's see, just some more. This is cool. This little character over here. I like her proportions. More crazy hair. Yeah. So more drawings, little drawings. Back to the hair. So this is January 20th now, 2015. Each one of these, every time I flip, it's one page. I mean, one day. Sorry, not one page. One day. So every time I flip, it's one day into the future, and hopefully there's one more day of progress, but not always. And here, see, more caricatured, more pushed. What if I push the chin out? And what if I do the opposite? I'll do this a lot, where I take one thing and I draw it one way, and then I do it the opposite way. So, let's give him a very receded jaw here. And I don't know what this is, but it looks kind of interesting to me. So there's that. Okay, now here, what I'm doing is thinking more in terms of design. And I realized this was a big weakness of mine, and it's been that way for a long time. It's not something I've actively tried to deal with. And so, for instance, you look at this hair, right? It's coming down from the face. It's pretty boring. And then this one, it's like, oh, that's a bit of an improvement. And then I actually like this one better than this one. But drawing these helps me realize, like, okay, yeah, you know, doing the diagonal, it's much more interesting than just a flat cut like that. And the same thing here with the clouds. Okay, this is boring. Why? Because there's not much shape variation. It's pretty regular. And then you look at this one, and it's like, okay, that's a bit more interesting. But the shape is kind of ugly, if you think about it. It's like this big blobby shape, and then this shape. Whereas I think this one of the three is the best. You know, you've got some small shapes, a big shape, back to some small shapes, almost nothing, and then some small shapes. It's like, yeah, that's very nice. You've got a read of like a small, big, medium, small, tiny, small, whatever. And I thought about the same thing with this. You know, you have a square and you have a bunch of other squares, and how could you arrange these objects on a page? So imagine that these were just transparent cells, so you could see through them, but you still see the border, and then how would you arrange them in a very appealing way? And I thought, well, this could be one way of doing so. There's obviously other ways, but I was trying to explain, or explore, you know, how would you make things more designed, more interesting. And here's something else. Here's some crazy hurricane or tornado hair, and here's some other thing where I just like broke the hair up. Okay, so on this page, what I was doing is first some sketches, you know, just trying to draw a figure, and back view, and guy's butt. And then I thought, oh, I should look up tutorials on drawing butts, and I found one on DeviantArt. By an artist called Doxy, or at least I think it was on DeviantArt. Anyway, this artist Doxy, he's really good at drawing women, and a lot of his stuff is very sexualized, so I don't know if you're sensitive to that type of thing, maybe you wouldn't want to look at it, but I thought he's very helpful and instructive. And he was showing how there's a bunch of shapes that you could use and make different butts with different shapes, and I thought that was interesting, so I tried copying that. And then I was just doing a bunch of thumbnails. I do this a lot, the little crickets. Just a bunch of crickets everywhere doing different things. I don't know if there's much I can say about it. I'm trying to see if there's any that I feel like, oh, I need to explain this. This is very pushed right here with this very small body and really long legs, and still like sort of like it's still childlike. And this is kind of interesting, you know, punching, some more actiony stuff. And here again, I'm really dealing with this idea of design, you know. You have an object, and in this case it's this hair, and you have you have three lines, right? So here's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. where do you place these lines and what looks the most appealing? So out of these, I don't know. I feel like this one is probably the most appealing, where you have 1, 2, some space, and a third. And then here it's a bit too much space. It's 1, 2, a lot of space in the third. And it's like, yeah, that's maybe too much. That's not working where they're all bunched together. That's not as good. So really, I think this one's the best one out of the 3. And things like this, I guess you could learn by observation or just figuring it out yourself, doing things like this, making a shape and like, okay, what looks good? And yeah, drawing some different figures, different body types. I like this, and I like the idea behind this. I guess if I was encouraging myself, I'd say, yeah, this is good, do more of this. And some more crazy hair. Again, I really like this type of hair. It's all like whoosh, crazy. But I don't like the proportion of the body. I think this would do, because this head is pretty small compared to this body. I would make the body much smaller, but keep, you know, maybe wider but smaller. Keep this as wide as it is, but maybe make the legs much shorter. Here you go. Yeah, this is more close to what I would do if I was to redo that body type. And that's some pretty cool hair too. It's got this almost, I don't know, flame-like feeling to me. So there's that. And here's some silhouettes. It's crazy how just blocking it in with marker makes the things pop off the page so much more. Yeah, so it's like got a blade and he's running and the blade's like hitting the ground. And these are characters from Havoc Way, which is a thing I'm working on with a guy who, it's his property and I'm doing some illustrations for it. And let's see, some more characters. I found this was really interesting because I was drawing a character and I gave them a stick, and I thought, I think here's where I gave them a stick. And I thought, what could they do with the stick? And just having this prop helped my figures so much more, because it like, oh, okay, maybe they hold it in this weird way, or you know, use it differently, and it made it interesting. All these are from imagination, so, you know, when you draw from life or draw from photos, you don't have to consider a lot of things, and I found just drawing from imagination, it helps me a lot because it forces me to, even though I don't have that visual memory, it forces me to think, like, really hard. What could a person be doing? Why could they be doing it? How could they be doing it? What are different approaches? And making a lot of this stuff unconscious. So the next time around, I don't have to think so hard. And here you go, some more crickets. That's a pretty cool action pose, I think this one is. This one not so much. I feel like it's too stiff. You know, there's not much flow. And then these are cool, you know. I really like drawing kids and expressions and stuff, and I don't do that so much. And so, you know, going back to that's kind of cool. And this person too, I like that. I like this character. And I don't know. I guess that's it. Yep, more stuff with this ribbon thing. So again, even though I've done it before, I'm not gonna just abandon it. I'm gonna keep drawing it again just to make sure it stays in my head, because you can forget these things, you know. If you just stop drawing it, you'll forget it. And one of the reasons why it's so important to draw what you like to draw is that it will help you to remember this stuff. Because if for instance, and this actually happened, I learned how to draw a cat head, and I made a tutorial how to draw a cat head, and then I never drew cat heads again. And then I was drawing cats, and I completely forgot, like, oh, what does a cat head look like? So it's important to draw what you like so that you're doing it all the time, so you don't forget it, so you use this. So here what I did is I drew a guy holding a piece of paper, because I was thinking more about storytelling, like, yeah, I should have people doing things a bit more. So he's reading this paper, and I colored it with a yellow marker, and then giving it off to the next person who reads it. He's like, oh, what's this? Well, I don't know, and gives it to this person. Ooh, something something interesting, and then this person's like, nah, hey, you read this, and then this demon's like, oh, okay, and he reads it. Yep, whoa, 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 whoa. Oh no, and then he folds the paper up and like, and then I don't know why this girl put it on her button, and then this one's on a magic carpet and flying away, and here it's just folding and doing stuff. I don't know. I have no explanations for you. Here, some more folding stuff. And some more characters, going back to proportions, playing with the angular shapes. And here's some ship designs. Something, I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I'd watched a Cynic's design video thing and he must have drawn ships. And then maybe I thought, like, I should draw ships or something. I don't know. But anyway, here's a ship. Here's a ship. And here's a ship. It's got like a big, I don't know what this is, sort of like a scorpion tail thing. And here's some ships. I like these shapes a lot more. These vertical and, I don't know, they just feel like fish to me. And I like to design ships that feel like fish. I feel like fish are the best way to go about designing, for me anyway. It's a personal taste thing, because I see a lot of ships, especially when you think of like gigantic space vehicle ship things, they're often built based on guns. Like they look almost like a big, I don't know, a rifle or something, just in space. And you see this with, anime does this a lot, where you have these gigantic ships that resemble guns. And I like much more organic, angelfish type ship shapes. Lots of curves and stuff. And here's what I was doing. I think this might have been a Doxy tutorial as well. But you take a cookie and you have chocolate chips, right? And where you put those chocolate chips on the cookie, or that's a question. Where do you put the chocolate chips on the cookie to make them really designed well? And putting them everywhere, just spread evenly, doesn't look that good. So what is the most appealing way of doing that? I mean, there's a bunch of solutions, but just exploring, appeal. And thinking about like, oh, maybe they follow, instead of just putting, because if I wasn't thinking about this at all, and I just draw a chocolate chip cookie with no chocolate chips, and I put the chocolate chips, I might put one here and one here and one here, and just spread very evenly. And I thought, no, what if, they're around it? And here, varying shapes. And again, I might have gotten a lot of this from a tutorial, so I don't want to take all the credit for this. If I did get it from a Doxy tutorial, then you should maybe, I mean, if you can get over some of the other stuff, or maybe not look at it, but Doxy's tutorials are really good. So he's an artist, DOXY. If you search up DOXY on DeviantArt, you'll find him, or Google search Doxy tutorials, whatever, you'll find it. Again, you might find some other stuff, because he draws a lot of hentai stuff as well. So, I don't know. Be careful, but I like his tutorials. The way he explains things. And here we go. Some more hair. Weird shapes. I don't like this one too much. But I do like this one. That feels much cooler. That shape. And this type of thing. It's like, whoa. A really, I don't know, more like a fat body. A very wide shape, and then this very tall hair. I think that's cool. Same with this person. So when you see the silhouette, it's very teardrop-like. And again, trying to make the things feel fast, like just fast shapes. And here's an eye that's whatever. And this person's face I really dislike. But moving on. So here I was drawing, again, more overweight women and trying to get them to be sharp, and how I would do that with the concave stuff. And these weren't really working well. So then I actually started to look up real life reference. And so I drew these two. And I saw so these are based off photographs. And there's a bunch of stuff I never knew about. So like there's this line, this crease that was forming. And same here. The shapes were very different than I had imagined them to be. So then what I did is I drew this, kind of like I've drawn, different ages. I drew different weight. So I drew this person. They're kind of really low body fat and very muscular. And then this person, and then getting a bit more fat. And where does the fat deposit? And more fat, more fat. But again, keeping the style. And I noticed with really fat, you don't actually get these creases as much. The entire thing becomes very smooth and just bigger shapes. So, yep, looking at reference is very good and very informative. And so when I look at reference, it's not to copy a drawing. It's to gain information, gain knowledge, and then apply that to my drawing. Here's some more different body types. This is nice. I like this silhouette and these silhouettes. For some reason, just putting in marker, it makes it so much more clear and so much cooler. I think this is from reference. Pretty sure this is from figures drawing reference of someone shooting with an arrow, bow and arrow. And some cats doing cat things and floating, because some cats float, I suppose. And let's see, a bit more hair and some cat things again. And I don't know, this is a, maybe I was thinking about cynics again, because this is kind of what he feels to me like, because he works in a bird store, so I feel like he has beady eyes and like a beaky nose, and I don't know, but it's still cool. It's like, whatever. That's his catchphrase. If you see cynics, say whatever. That's probably how he says hello. And some more thumbnails. So I'll just go through these because I think this one's kind of interesting. The breasts are flapping around and they're very pointy. And okay, so we're done with that page. And I apologize for my loud computer. It's very loud. It wants attention, but I don't want to give it attention. And some more dynamic poses. I mean, this isn't working. This isn't good, but just like whatever. Just trying to, yeah, you know, get it to work. This is cool. I like this one. I think this, like, if this is hair, which I think it is, it's hair going around. That's a cool idea. A lot of times I have ideas in this small format that I think are cool, and then when I try and flesh them out, they just fall apart. So that's something I have to work on, you know. I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm making excuses. I should work on that. And some more stuff. More figures. Okay, so here I probably realized that I was having, or I think it might have been Flavia who told me something like, you have problems with drawing feet, they don't look realistic or something. I don't know what it was, but whatever. I figured, okay, I should learn how to draw feet. And again, making them pointy, making the shapes more like, I think this is sort of too extreme. Maybe the heel needs to be more of that heel in the back, but this one's kind of cool. Anyway, I like the shape of it. And yeah, just making shapes and more characters. And yeah, so these are probably done from reference, from photo reference, but then heavily stylized. Not much more to say on this. And here again, some more photo reference. And I think this turned out really cool. Like, I like this picture, but it's something I'm thinking about, you know, how much do I want to use photo reference? And I'm finding that the more I do from imagination, then whenever I use photos, I get so much more out of it than when I just used photos. Because for most of my, or at least the last, let's say 6 years, no, 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. The last 10 years I've been using a lot of, you know, looking at photos. So this whole thing about looking at reference, it's not like I haven't done it. I think I'm old enough that I've done most things and tried most approaches. Obviously not all of them, because you can always learn more. But, you know, finding that this way is really helpful to draw a lot from imagination and a little bit from photo reference instead of a lot from photo reference and a little bit of imagination. I don't think that's a good combination. But that's just my take on it, and you might find your ratio is different. So, more stuff. More little kid with crazy hair. And I really feel like I have a style with the hair. Like, I feel like there's something that is me. And this stuff, you know, this character, I really like this character. I really like how it turned out. The eyes I'm happy with. The eyebrows I'm happy with. The hair I think is pretty cool. And this is a different view of the same character. I like this. Like, this is what I would like to call my stuff. And this isn't. You see, this one, the skull, it's too big. The eyes are kind of squished. And I don't know. This doesn't look appealing to me, whereas this looks much more appealing. So it's like more of this, less of this. But I could go either way, you know? Same with this. It's like, yeah, do I caricature it more? Because the problem with this is it's very manga-like, but the problem with that type of style is often it's a bit more difficult to get variation when everything starts to look like you're basing it off the same shapes. So here, for instance, I still have some of that manga feeling, the anime feeling, but it's also something of my own that's not there that I'm adding, and that's a bit more than this. Whereas this it's almost pretty generic, you know, like you could have seen this somewhere before. Whereas this feels a bit more like unique, I suppose. But again, it's a balancing act, and I'd mentioned that I got different color pens, so I don't remember if it's a set of 10 or 12 or something, but I wanted to use one of each color. So this one is, I think this is a brown, and then this is a blue, and like a blue-black, I think it's called. So anyway, I was doing a bunch of colors, and then I did an eye with all the colors in there, and I did these two faces, and this one it's brown for the outline, and then pink for the first initial sketch. So I went pink first to get the sketch, and then I used red and filled in certain things, and then I used black for the outline, and then this I used light blue, and then normal blue, and then that blue-black, this one, for the outline. And I think it's a pretty cool effect, I think, personally. And then just crickets with those. And here's some more hair. These are all very flat, but again, it's experimenting. Oh, what about this hair? Oh, what if I do this? 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 A lot of it is just that, you know, what if I do this? And then even if you don't think you're learning, you kind of are. Like, your brain will remember every attempt as like, what worked, what didn't work. Let me try that for the next, let me explore and remember that. And it takes a while to digest. Sometimes you need to sleep, and then the next day you'll remember it more. But here, see these type of swirly shapes. Oh, what if I use these shapes? And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So recently I've stuck to this shape quite a lot, but I didn't remember exactly where I started this shape, and it must have been this image where I probably did this shape and then this circle, and it's like, that's cool. What if I made it more pointy? And then I've reused this shape since a bunch of times. But it's probably not soon. But anyway, it's little things like that. You don't think you're learning. Maybe it's just like, oh, that was a failure, or that's just a drawing. I didn't get anything out of it. But you really do. And here I thought, well, you know, I'm making the hair crazy. Well, what else could I make crazy? What if I made the mustache really crazy? And again, this type of stuff, it's about that design thing. Remember about the cookies, where it's like, okay, you have cookies, where do you put the chocolate chips? Or you have clouds, and where do you make, you know, the big shape and the smaller shape? This is that too, you know, you have this hair mass, and you have, see here, there's just lines everywhere. Well, it's not really everywhere, but they're not as carefully placed. And it's like, well, can you place them more, just a few lines, and where would you put them to describe this form? And I don't think I did a good job here. I think that's way too even, where you have these lines. But again, it's something to keep in mind when designing hair. Designing anything is think about the design. And this guy's got crazy mutton chops. It almost looks like a beetle because of it, or an ant or something, with those I don't know what you call it, mandibles. And here we go with some hair finally. Again, this thing is what I was thinking about, right? Where do I put those lines? So realizing that, yes, I might know the idea. It might make sense in my head, but I don't have enough mileage. So I've got to keep drawing these things. I've got to draw it to the point that I won't forget it, that it just becomes second nature. So yeah, I quite like this hair because it's doing this like whoosh thing. Woo. And in the next episode, I'm going to be suffering through the process of creating cards for a convention. So I hope this episode helped, and thanks for watching.